Welcome to the Journey to Wellness podcast, sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society and Healing Wheel Holistic. I'm Melissa Stonehill-Kyam, and I will be your host. With over 40 years' experience in the health and fitness industry, I am ready to dive in to some of the most conflicting topics we have regards to health today. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Wellness podcast. Today I am sitting with Sonya Freeman of Zen Vistas, and we just had a lot of fun before we went on the air, and we're going to continue that fun as we talk to you and explore so many different pathways towards wellness using alternative modalities, shamanism, all kinds of different deep healing. I'm going to let Sonya tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you.
And allowing us all this platform, so I appreciate that.
Sure.
So overall, I do work here at the Essential Wellness Center in Colorado Springs, and my main modalities are Reiki. It actually began with meditation coaching because I discovered that about 15 years ago, which then led me into Reiki, which then led me into other forms of energy healing, including shamanism. I've just begun that journey. And then the newest journey is becoming a death doula or an end-of-life doula. And that all came about after an amazing life full of amazing experiences and deciding to follow my excitement, and here we are. So it's an ever-evolving journey.
You know what I think is really exciting is I've met so many people who are practicing Reiki, and the more the merrier. The nucleus of people that I've met, we all got our attunement 1 and 2 from the same person.
Mary. She was Mary.
And then
yes, the Reiki place.
Then we connected with Julie,
yes.
Speechens. And it's just like we are creating this web, this family of there's like a magnetism and attraction for us.
There is.
And I love it because I don't believe in coincidences.
Mm-mm.
And Mary left Colorado Springs. She doesn't live here anymore. And now the people that went through her 1 and 2 and then went on further, it's almost like this torch has been passed.
Oh.
And I really feel
absolutely.
that.
Like you can feel the momentum of those of us, especially those of us who may have gone through a hermit phase or some type of dark night of the soul, or, I feel like a lot of us who are going to come to the path of being, whatever you want to call it, in service. Mm-hmm. is really the term, but some people call it a light warrior or a light worker or, healer. But in general, it's just coming to your place of service and, falling into your calling. And those of us that were meant to do that, we have been in this transitory stage, but all of a sudden, there's like this momentum building of energies raising, mm-hmm. and we're starting to see each other's light more and more, and like flocking together and sharing more aligned intentions.
Yeah, I like how you put that, the aligned intentions. Yeah. And something else that we were talking about before we went on air was intuitive healing, intuitive responses. Yeah. And I feel like as a society, we have learned to not rely on our intuition.
Absolutely.
And I just remember, there's a lot of things you go through in life as a kid, and you're like, no, I'm not going to go down that block today. Or when I first started having kids, I remember sitting inside a lecture, and I knew that my kids were playing with other kids outside in the building. And all of a sudden, I was like, you need to go check on your kids right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I wasn't going to ignore it, because when you get that message, you're like, okay. And I went outside and I saw that the group of kids were playing too close to the street. And I called them all back. But I was a young mom, I was in my 20s. And when I went back, I sat with that for a while.
Do you find that, we talk about how it wasn't really shared with us or even told to us that we could live, intuitively, that, all answers are within us and, follow your own heart. We weren't really taught that in certain circumstances, but as a mom, that was the one place that was safe to follow your intuition was about your children. I do remember hearing like, oh, you'll have kind of this connection to your kid, you'll just kind of know, and, it has to do with biology or this or that, but I feel like that was the one place that we could tap into our intuition and becoming a mom, even though it wasn't my plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a world where, in fact, tapping into my intuition was forbidden, and seen as, counterproductive to the philosophy I was raised in, it was a moment of like, oh my goodness, there is this other.
Right, and you know why I feel like it works with being a mom? Is because when that happens to you, that download or that voice, you can't ignore it.
No,
No,
because you're very inspired not to.
You just can't.
And motherly love, like
you just can't. And there's certain things, for parents out there. I don't believe it's just a mom thing. I believe it's a parent thing, or if you're connected to any entity that you love with that level of heart. There's certain things where you draw the line and you know what you know and you don't care how you know it, but you know it.
Yeah.
I also remember once, just to talk about intuition, I was supposed to go to this party. I was in high school. I was supposed to go to this party, and a couple of the guy friends were going to pick us up. We were going to go to this party on Pacific Coast Highway on the beach. My parents said, don't go tonight. Like, what? You're in high school, you're gonna miss a party? Like, you really shouldn't go tonight. Well, why are you saying that? And I didn't like, what? And they found a million reasons why. And they didn't even know why they were saying it, to be honest with you. They didn't know why they said it. They just said it.
Overpowering urge to.
They just said you can't go. After they already said I could go.
Yeah.
After they already said that these guys could drive me.
Which, as parents, you don't want to do that. Like, that's not, they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be fun to
and
say
then,
after permission. I'd like, take it back. That's
yeah,
not
and I was a
fun
good
for
kid.
a parent.
And then my dad was like, fine, I'll drive you. And I'm like, I'm not showing up to a party that my dad dropped me off at, like.
I remember this day.
That's not going to happen. I was a junior in high school, Well, lo and behold, they got in a head-on collision and were severely damaged. Severely. One of the people that was in the car was in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. What? How did that happen? So that leads me to talk about the inner voice. Talk about some of you may believe in guardian angels, some of you may not. Some of you, give a name to where you get these voices, and some people just bat it away as their imagination. It never happened. So I am learning to pay attention. And not just pay attention, but to lean in.
I like that. Lean
in. Really lean in.
I like that.
So I want to know, what is your experience there? Like, how do you feel about that? Like I'm going to use the word voice. That's a clairaudience. And how do you feel about that? Like, what's your experience with that?
So as we said, when we're younger, things happened and I would say things and it would kind of freak people out. And I remember my mother telling me stories like, yeah, when you're this age, you said this, and it really freaked us out. And they would say things like, oh, well, she's got a wild imagination, or, you're taught to discount whatever experience happens if I saw things or if I heard things. It was always like, oh, no, it's just her imagination. So I started doubting everything.
So you were seeing things.
Person. Oh, yeah.
And people around you were kind of letting you know that you were maybe
making it up.
Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
And
just imagination. Because I love to be expressive and I loved writing and telling stories. And so it just was very natural, but some of those stories, looking back now, were kind of intuitive. But you know, there are certain things that happen in your life, certain moments, you know, certain things you go through that can be kind of traumatic. And one of those for me was I kind of died, you know, did the whole going into the light thing. And on the other side of that, down the road, I didn't remember a lot.
How old were you then?
30, yeah, 30-ish.
Was it illness? Was it a...
It was an accident. Yeah, it was an accident. But after I came back, I started having these like intuitions and like these knowings of what happened when I was unalive, right? Like not completely, but you know, like one step definitely on the other side, even though there was still some slight thing holding me, right? But I started having these visualizations of like, oh my goodness, you know, this happened, or I saw this, or I experienced that. But I was like, I know that's just your imagination. It's just your imagination. But then I read the book Journey of Souls.
Okay. Profound experience for you, I see.
I was like, oh my goodness, it wasn't my imagination. Like these people from different backgrounds and religions and philosophies and cultures, they all had this similar experience. I wasn't crazy my whole life. You know, I felt like, oh, I was crazy, I'm crazy. But no, in that moment, I was like, okay, no. So I began to trust it. You know, I met Mary and she taught me more about following intuition, and, you know, began in Reiki. And when you're open like that, to just be a vessel, you know, for that light and that healing to come through when you're out of your own way.
Yes.
And you start to have that expanded vision and things start happening and aligning, and people do start receiving, you know, some level of benefit from what's happening and giving you that validation. You're like, I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy. So that inner voice journey for me was just really coming back to where I was as a child, you know, where we are naturally when we come into the world, which is connected to everything.
Pure. Yeah. I had I had told you that I was getting kind of these messages that were so specific and a little scientific, which is interesting. And one of the strongest experiences I had was after my dad passed away, may he rest in peace. My youngest daughter was sick, and she was diagnosed with an ear infection.
Okay.
And I always treated everything holistically, and I just couldn't get her over this. I was asleep, and in my sleep, my father came to me, and he said, you need to get up. You need to take Essie to the ER right now.
Oh, thank
She
God.
has double pneumonia, and these are the bacterias. I don't even
That was
remember the
very
names
specific.
of it now.
That's very specific.
Yeah, it was very specific.
Very
So
specific, right.
my husband's a nurse, and I wake him up, and I'm like, let's go. He's like, she has an ear infection. And I'm like, I didn't tell him the experience yet. I'm like, no, I'm going. So I take my child, and imagine this, I'm in New York, I take my child, I'm in an ER in New York. I walk in, I'm the mom, here's the child, what's wrong? And I say, oh, she's got double pneumonia, these are the bacteria.
I'm sure they were like, oh, thanks. Okay.
And they were like,
Straight to
yeah, okay, we got a loony one here. So they have us there in the room, and it takes a while. Finally, they come back, the curtain opens. Doctor says, we're gonna have to admit your daughter. She's got double pneumonia. My husband's like, can I look at the bacterias? And then we see it, and there were 2 different bacterias. So then he said, how did you know this? I said, well, my father came to me. He's like, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? Right? Now, my dad loved his children and his grandchildren. Loved them. Was so demonstrative with his love. So that happened, but I didn't develop it then. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay. And I accepted it. In the course of my own practice, and now when I practice, it's happening all the time. It's happening.
And I feel like, again, there's a momentum where things are starting to happening more and more, and it's that shift, that, you know, dimensional shift we're going through. And as you were explaining that experience, it reminded me of something that I've just really almost dismissed as an experience, even though it was so amazingly profound, because I felt so insane as it was happening. But there were times I would have dreams. And then all of a sudden, and the dream seems very real, and it was kind of strange, and you know, we won't even talk about dreams, that's a whole nother subject, right? But at the time, to me, it was a dream. I'd always kind of had dramatic dreams and night terrors and things like that. But I remember one day, my mother, who was staying with us as I was in college, she was helping with the children, and she was going through like a heart disease situation, so she needed, you know, somewhere to be worked out lovely. She was in the kitchen, and I was in the living room sitting with my husband at the time, and our children were playing, and the phone rings, and I look at my husband at the time, and I said, "Oh no, Pa has died." And he's like, "What?" Because my grandmother was on hospice, and everybody was waiting, you know, and knowing that was coming. So if a phone call was coming, certainly it was going to be that. Right. But I was like, "Oh no," and all of a sudden that dream came back, and it was as if time kind of slowed down. And that whole thing replayed. Now, it's not that I had the forewarning of what was about to occur in time for me to do anything or know anything or for it to really be relevant, which was the other reason I just pushed it away, because I saw my mom going to answer the phone, and I'm like, "Oh no," in slow motion, like, what's happening? Like, oh no, I'm already getting sad, and I'm already starting to cry. Right. My husband's like, "What's going on?" My mom answers, she starts crying, he had died, and you know, and then that occurred several more times until I finally just shut down so completely energetically that I just blocked all of it out until, you know, a few years ago.
Well, I think sometimes we walk a fine line, and here's the fine line. So there's a lot of psychosis out there. There's a lot of mental health issues and troubled people.
Absolutely.
That, you know, kill someone because they heard a voice in their head.
Yes.
So the percentages, though, of that, because there's people that they hear all kinds of stuff, you know, and see all kinds of things, and it's like the yin and yang of life, you know, that you have these people experiencing these kind of psychotic episodes, and then on the flip side, you have I'm going to use the word enlightened people that have made themselves a clear vessel to receive other energetic signatures that are for the greater good. So because there's both, and you hear more about the psychotic episodes and someone shoots somebody and this kind of thing, you hear more of that than the greater good.
Right.
So when we start to talk amongst ourselves, and we can talk and say, you know, well, I heard this, and this angel came to me, and this and that, and we're
great,
you know,
no
okay, well, what colors were you
awesome.
seeing, and what was their sense? Yeah.
Love
but there's, I think, a lot of people out there that are fearful of people who develop their clairs.
Yeah.
And I can only...
And understandable.
Yeah. And I can only say it's because you get more media on the psychotic episodes that have happened that have nothing to do with people who develop their clairs.
You know, and I think there's still a part of the planetary consciousness as a whole, you know, even though that vibration is shifting and we are moving into more of that 4D reality and what that will look like coming together as one. But, you know, we still have, you know, some of these polarities where people are seeing, you know, still from the eyes of our traditions and the way things have been, and, you know, still holding that kind of sacred. And when these changes are happening so quickly, I mean, it's all of us who are in this are feeling this momentum, and it's, you know, we're going through these challenges. Right. So imagine, you know, what it's like for people who haven't experienced this yet, and then they see some people going through it, yet they're still in the, you know, resonance of those old belief systems and those old, you know, social structures. It's got to be very...
Oh, there's so much conditioning.
I mean, you know, what are they supposed to do? And I feel like, you know, the only thing we can do is just try to show up in love and you know, do our thing in our way
100%.
And just, you know, be open to, you know, whatever space or, you know, information or, you know, but making it more mainstream, because there are others like us out there who have had these experiences and we were told it wasn't okay.
Because and then we become victims of our conditioning.
Exactly. I was literally told, you know, you've got the devil in you.
Mm-hmm.
At one time when I had one of these dreams, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, my mother's fingers just got cut off. And they're like, oh, that's the devil. And I understand where that was coming from.
Yeah.
I do. With all my heart, I understand.
So it's a conditioned, limited belief system.
Yeah.
And that becomes sacred to people. People believe what they believe. And, I kind of broke through and shattered a lot of my own conditioning through an experience where I was very sick, and I had been sick for days, and I was just literally lying on the floor, just sick. And
how old were you?
Oh, this was recently.
Oh.
So
okay.
this was in 2020.
Oh wow.
And I didn't have a fever, but I was kind of slipping in and out. And this entity appeared to me, a woman, with her hands open, beaming me, standing over my body, and I felt as if there was like this electrical current going up and down, up and down, up and down in my body. And I accepted it, and she started talking to me. And since people are watching this, probably think I'm nuts. I'm really not nuts, okay? And she started talking to me, telling me how fractured society is, and fractured the world is, and that I had work to do, and that I wasn't going anywhere, that I was meant to heal other people, and that she would be there for me, and all I need to do is call upon her.
Yeah,
okay?
We can't help if we don't ask.
Right. So when I came through this, I was almost afraid to tell anybody because it was outside of my culture and outside of my conditioning and outside of the rules and regulations and the lines that I was supposed to draw through. But I did share it with a few people, and then I decided to take it for a test drive.
Tell me about that. What does that look like?
It looks like when you want to work with someone or on someone, like I also am a Reiki practitioner. I use Reiki as a body scan as well to do my intuitive nutrition work. And when I stand by somebody, I like to make myself a clear channel, and I know and recognize that the energy is coming through me and not from me. Yeah.
Very clear distinction.
Yes. And when I was able to start to wrap my head around that and become humble, everything amplified. So when you're asking about, you said sometimes you feel like a toddler when you're working on these clairs.
Yes, because these beautiful, gods and goddesses that are so talented, and they've been on this journey and, held the lantern so that the rest of us could start heading down. And it's not about age. I mean, I'm 44 and, really coming into my power just now. So it shows there's no age that can happen.
I don't think it's about age. What the wisdom I think is, though, you're welcome. And sometimes what does come with age is learning how to let go of the ego. That is a big deal. And, I'm 60. And by the time I hit 60, I'd been through several careers. I've been through a lot of bittersweet stuff. Yeah. And then you start to draw off your experience and look back, and you start to develop just this, I don't know how to describe it any other way than this slippery skin, because stuff doesn't stick anymore.
Well, because you're not just, one-dimensional. You're not just, the ego is a great tool.
And the ego ego's important.
A great tool. It is how we interact in this 3D experience is through this ego, but we were so conditioned that the ego was who we were, and it was created by these social systems so that we would be so focused on whatever our story was. The ego is your story, so it doesn't leave room for you to be in the now you. Right. You're so busy living up to this story. My guides gave me this really brilliant download the other day, because they said, okay, so what's your favorite ice cream? And I was like, well, you're my higher self, so for a fact that my favorite ice cream is butterbean. And then my throat chakra shut down. And they're like, are you sure? What is your favorite ice cream now? And I realized that the story of when my mom was, it was a dramatic time in life, and I was like maybe 8 or 9, and she went through all this trouble to make this beautiful German chocolate cake with homemade butter pecan ice cream with pecans from my grandparents' orchard. Like,
Wow.
It was the most beautiful. She was so happy that day. It was just such a great day. So that was always my favorite ice cream. So when they asked me, like, what is your favorite ice cream? I realized I was about to tell the story, the ego story of my favorite ice cream. Because now if I go to the grocery store for a treat, it's going to be Tillamook mudslide.
Okay, remember that.
Guys. Tillamook mudslide is my jam right now.
And she said Tillamook, not
Tillamook.
Tillamook.
Is it Tillamook?
No, I don't know what it is.
Tillamook.
I think you pronounced it just fine.
But, that just shows us how, like, the ego, it's a great tool to interact with. But, like you said, seeing that it literally is just your tool and not your being, just kind of, and I'm just coming into that more and more
It's so true
right
and so real, because I remember, I did a podcast. I was a guest on someone else's podcast yesterday, and it was talking about addiction. And, I said, well, one of the earliest addictions I ever had was perfectionism.
For all the reasons.
And
I feel that. Yeah.
Growing up, we moved from New York to California. I was a young girl in Southern California. You had to be pretty, you had to be lean, a smart, all these things. So I felt this addiction to perfectionism. I got to be the best at this and the best at that and get the best grades and have, and it follows you.
It does.
And then all of a sudden you fail, and your first failure, you're devastated. For me, maybe it was coming in second place instead of first, right?
Yeah.
You fail, you're devastated. You don't have the tools to deal with that because you have programmed yourself and the people around you. Yeah. That's great. You're doing great. Nobody says that when you fall on your face, right? But this is what we should say.
Yes.
You tried. You did your best. And you failed and you got back up.
Exactly.
It's so important. And through the journey, I think that as people that like to help others and give them tools and help them get out of their own way and help them enjoy life, believe in themselves, dream big, we have to work on ourselves.
Yeah, that's absolutely where all of this started. You know, for me, it was the day I decided, like, you know what, I'm no longer a victim of my story. I'm no longer a victim of fear. I honor what I went through. The woman that and child that had to endure the things I endured and go through things I endured, but I no longer want to be a victim to that story. That's not who I am now. Like, the person I am now, I don't even hardly recognize. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago. And we're not going to be the exact same person in 10 years. So who am I now? And I want to be that person now. And who is she? Like, we could look into the mirror and it's all about, okay, what is out of place? What is wrong with me? Rather than, you are your best friend from childhood. Nobody knows you like you know. You should be your best friend. You should show up as your own lover. If you look at the face of your lover, you know every detail. And if they have a weird shaped ear, you know it.
And
if it's your lover, you know it and you don't care. You think it's cool. But if you look at your own, I noticed my ears, one's closer to the head than the other. And I was like, how am I 44 inches? Well, I got rid of my hair, so that helped to see my ears. But, we just don't look at ourselves like that. And why? But it was when I started saying, okay, no more, that's when all of this shifted. And here we are, so yeah.
Yeah. And I love all that. And you're in your 40s and you're coming to this realization, and usually women in their 40s, maybe they're not there yet. I hate to put an age stamp on it, because I am working with a young woman who's in her 20s that's very evolved.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And the question is, when you said, who are you? So it always takes me back. My favorite movie is Alice in Wonderland. It's my favorite character. It's my favorite story. And I think about that scene where the hookah smoking caterpillar,
Yes.
is blowing the
Yes.
smoke rings, and
Yes,
Alice
guys.
is there, and he says, "Who are you?" And she says, "Alice," and he says, "No,
No.
that's who you were yesterday.
Yes.
But who are you today?"
Who are you today?
Right?
Now, where
Who are you? And it was so profound. I love that you know that too.
Yes.
Because no, I learned so much from that story.
No.
And
it's a profound story. It is not just a children's tale.
oh, it's not at all. But I think it's really important to ask yourself that.
Yeah.
Who are you? And most people, if you say, "Who are you?" they'll tell you what they do for a living.
Yeah.
They'll tell you how many kids they have.
Yeah.
Or if they're single.
Their roles.
Some people, when I work in the nutrition field, so some people will tell me their problem is who they are.
Yeah.
Because
we identify our
right.
story.
Like
our story.
For sure. I met a guy, he came into my office, he introduced himself. He said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I have an eating disorder."
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him, and this was in a corporate setting, and I said, "You need to go home and come back. Come back when you actually can introduce yourself and tell me who you are."
Yeah.
Because what I felt was, okay, this guy's got an eating disorder. He's going to come back to me, but right away, he's got to stop owning that as his persona. So you are studying now shamanism.
Yeah.
You're going to have to break through a lot of different things with people.
Oh.
Yourself and others.
I had no idea.
Can you tell me
I had
what
no idea.
is shamanism? I always thought it was something you were born into.
So I'm going to give two views on this. The first one is that, shamanism isn't just from one culture, from one continent. Shamanism is a tradition that exists around the world, and it's been called different names. Sometimes it is shamanism, and there's a background. I have some Russian heritage, and there's some amazing shamanistic background and tradition within that community.
Mm-hmm.
The tradition I'm being trained through now is from a civilization in Peru, very still tied to the pre-Incan times.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter whether it was a shaman or a medicine man or a medicine woman, these were beings who usually were chosen from birth. So I'm going through right now like a 2-year program. And for me, I feel like that's just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll ever reach shaman, but my definition of it has evolved. Yes, I understand that is the perspective and the tradition of it, but there's even, and I'm not going to quote this directly because I don't want to get it wrong and be disrespectful, but there is a Peruvian story about how there is going to be this evolution of what we need as our time evolves. There's going to be an evolution of what it looks like to come into the world as a medicine person, that some of the older and sacred traditions from especially like in South America are going to be joining with some of the more contemporary energies from the north, and they're going to come together and create this new balanced way of manifesting energy that works for where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
So then fast forward, then what am I going to do within that dynamic, as a shaman? And all I know so far is that we become aware that there are other realms besides this one 3D, what you can call a matrix. Even quantum physics is starting to, support that this is possibly some type of holographic experience. I love that quantum science is proving a lot of what metaphysics has said for thousands of years. But so now as someone who sees that there are these other realms, because I went there, I went to that other experience of that other realm. And then I also had such a profound connection to trees and animals, like in a way that I could always like feel them, and I would speak to them, and I was a true tree hugger, and so I'd experienced this other earth energy. So all to me, a shaman is at the very beginning of their questioning of their path, right? Because a lot of people can follow shamanic practices without becoming shamans. So I just started following the path of this idea. I believe that there are realms that of the 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D, and on up, and that we have access to all of them. And there are ways that we can access them, and we can bring back from those realms knowledge, medicine, insight, guidance. And so a shaman is one that trains themselves to get out of their way, to be able to go into these realms and to face what might be there. And sometimes these things are extraordinary. I saw things that I can't even talk about right now because I haven't processed what I saw. When I went on a lower world journey, my first weekend doing the medicine wheel in the South, I had a journey that I still can't speak of because I don't even know how to.
You haven't integrated it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just phenomenal. But when I came out, I was so shaken. And my mentor, Jerry Doran, she said, teaching this class, in this world, you may encounter energies that are not the most positive, but we are here to hold that lantern. And you've got to be able to step into your power no matter what you encounter. You know, so I feel that overall being a shaman is just like being an end-of-life doula, which is just like being a Reiki practitioner, which is just being an intuitive nutritionist. What we do is we show up and we hold space. We know what energies may come at us if we wrap our arms around a person for just a second, but we hold that space. Block that wind, block that rain, block all those energies coming at them so they can take a moment and connect with themselves. To have some clarity, to have some balance. You know, we send them and we're able to hold that space while also channeling through, you know, some type of healing energy or intention that they are receiving in their free will for their highest good. So we're just space holders, you know, and I think that's the journey of being a shaman, is learning how to hold that space to serve others in whatever way they need.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad that was recorded because that's just so passionately put, so beautifully
put. And it's a baby. It's just my very beginning baby.
It's okay, but you know, you're going to look back on this and you're going to be so happy that, you know, sometimes I'll look back on things and be like, did I said that? You know?
I was like, oh, she was so like, cute back when she thought that was what that was.
No, seriously, it was really touching. And I'm working with some cancer patients in Reiki, and I asked my husband a little bit about why he thinks this works, because a lot of hospitals are allowing Reiki practitioners into the infusion centers and working in oncology. Oncology seems to be a little more far-reaching in alternative practices.
They do.
So just like you were saying about holding space, if by doing that and almost, you know, creating, I'm envisioning a womb kind of image in my head, but when you're creating this beautiful protective white bubble around somebody, you allow the parasympathetic nervous system to take over. And healing can only take place in a parasympathetic mode. Yes. People cannot heal in a sympathetic mode. Yeah, that's science.
Yes.
So when we talk about the nervous system, what we aim to do by holding that space, the term holding space, is people can figure a lot of things out on their own. Everyone has the energetic body, the physical body, the energetic body. There's lots of veils. You got to start throwing away the veils, or call it peeling the onion, to get through to that aha moment.
Yeah.
And having somebody hold that space for you is really no different than when you're a child, maybe you had a bad dream and you go into a parent and that parent holds you to their heart, and all of a sudden you feel better.
You know, and that's why we have to go on that journey of healing ourselves continually. You know, I didn't understand the depth of that commitment, because they said, okay, that's fine, you know, if you're going to go down this path, and we feel you are called to go down this path for all these reasons and synchronicities and whatever, but you've got to be like ready. Your life will get turned upside down on this journey so that you can be shown things on these deeper levels, right? But when we breathe through those experiences, breathe through those challenges, handle them differently from a place of loving ourselves so much, showing up for ourselves. Then, first of all, when you're not angry and you're not, because everything's a reflection. So if you're angry or if you're resentful or you're guilty, you're going to be putting that vibe out. You're going to be getting that vibe back from the people around you. But when you're just so happy and so blissed out and so in the present, that when people come in, you're not just, holding space for them to process. You're holding a space from a place of balance, so they don't feel the energy of judgment. Right. A lot of us don't want to become vulnerable even in front of somebody who's a practitioner of some type of holistic modality, because we're not told it's okay to be vulnerable. But when we hold space, they have to walk in, be surrounded with love, the love that we have overpouring from us, because we've been healing and experiencing love and not being afraid to open up and be vulnerable and receiving more love because of that. So we give them that love, we give them that non-judgment. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, let them know they are perfect right now where they are. There's nothing they need to do or be or experience or heal before they're perfect. They are perfect now. They are the puzzle piece that we need in this collective now.
That's so well put. And one of the main things that just kind of came up for me when you were saying that is that people need to work through their shame. That a lot of times you did not put that on yourself. I mean, that was put on you from early childhood. Shame, that feeling of shame.
And they would then say shame on you.
Oh yeah,
shame on you.
Absolutely.
I've said it. I said it to my kids.
Or just you don't turn in an assignment in school and the teacher decides to call you out.
Shame.
Embarrassment, shame, these types of things. And I was explaining to a friend of mine the other day that a lot of times what adults experience happens to them most likely at the age of 6 or 7, because that's the pivotal year where you start to integrate some of the things that happen in the world, the cause and effect. You don't really have that sense of cause and effect too much when you're a toddler.
Correct.
But around 6 and 7, that's when you start to define yourself based on what other people say about you. Oh, she's such a pretty girl. Or smart, or why are you wearing that? That doesn't even match. All these things, as little as they sound. I like to bring this up quite often. There was a period in my life where I taught art. And one of the things we learned was when a child draws something, you say, tell me about your picture. Right? And the child's going to tell you, well, this is the guy, and he went in this rocket, and he's all over it. Right?
Yep.
But then he takes the picture, and he shows it to another adult. And the kid's all excited. Do you see the rocket? And maybe the adults, I don't see a rocket there. What are you talking about? Because when I started to teach adults art, oh, I can't draw. Who told you that?
Absolutely.
What do you mean you can't draw? Of course you can. But they were told already there and then that they can't. Or maybe one of the adults in the room has a headache and the child's singing, and then, would you stop making that noise? And then the kid never sings again. So we got to be careful as adults what we say to children.
Most profoundly. And with, goodness, we could talk forever about the lessons we learn. And again, I just, I'm like that, freshman who's so excited about all the new things happening and all the new experiences. And I just, and those that are the seniors are like, yes, I remember when I was a freshman. That's so cute. But, one of the things that I learned on this journey that's been coming up a lot lately has to do with allowing each individual to show up so authentically, which first of all, you have to show up authentically, because if you don't show up with that energy of authenticity, we feel that. You can feel, right? You can feel when somebody's not showing up authentically, you know. We each have that intuition. Everybody has that intuition. Everybody has psychic gifts. You can tell when someone's not showing up, when they're kind of putting on a facade, when they kind of have a mask or a social schema with, you know, through which they're, you know, experiencing the world. Like, you know that. So if we don't show up authentically, even to our children, to be able to say, okay, here's my art. Let me explain it to you, and see, it looks, you know, what some people might call crap, but we had a good time, right? Let's see what else you like or what else you enjoy. If you don't show up as a parent being authentic, and then, you know, as a practitioner being authentic, or, you know, whatever that might look like into a relationship, then, you know, we all grow up thinking that nobody else is going through what we're going through.
Yeah, we're unique.
You know, we like, okay, well, you know, these things happen. They've discredited me. They've, you know, shut me down my entire life. And so we go into our heads and we have this voice like, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm not this. And I'm going to go out and put on this mask in society. But I'm not going to really let them know that I am struggling and that I don't even want to get out of bed today.
Right.
You know, because we all have these phases that, like you said, start with shame. We don't want people to see our shame.
Oh, 100%. And then there's always the buzzword to raise awareness on suicide and raise awareness on depression. And then as soon as someone raises their hand and says, you know, I'm depressed or I'm having suicidal thoughts, we shudder. We don't want to hear it. You're like, oh my gosh, right? So I think all in all is very hard for people to even know what authentic means. And I've met people who think that by spewing, they're being authentic, which is not. They're being an attention seeker, an attention getter, or something. Like, being authentic doesn't mean you're having a tantrum.
You know, one thing that I adore my children. My children, I have the 3 most amazing children, and I love you all so much. Bragging as a mom, y'all are the best. The 3 most amazing children, and they have inspired me in ways I can't even tell you. And one of the things that I really love about these younger generations coming up is that more and more they are becoming authentic. Because for so long they grew up in that age of like social media, and they saw the masks, and all of a sudden mental health becomes a thing, and all of a sudden, you know, all these different, equality and equity, and they're just like, you know what, this didn't work for you guys. We're going to do something different. And all of a sudden TikTok and all these other platforms come up where they're talking about the things that we're not supposed to talk about.
Right.
You know, we're talking about experiences we're not supposed to talk about. We're talking about mental health in ways I was never allowed to talk about mental health anything back in the day. You kept that quiet. And if you had to talk about it at home, you know, we don't mention family problems outside the house. No, now they're putting everything on TikTok, and that is making those of us who weren't raised like that show up. Okay, wow, if my children are going to show up this authentically to me and to the world, and all these beautiful souls on TikTok that come out really being themselves. I mean, just so authentically coming out being themselves. You know, first of all, again, it opens up that space of inspiration for those of us that are like, okay, I see where I need to heal, where I can be more authentic, and we can come into that space. And then as practitioners, hold that for those that we serve. But also, I think it just gives us hope. I think things are really going to transition. I know so much is going on in the world. I know it is going on in the world. I know. Feel that momentum?
Exactly. And part of the reason that I started the retreat company that I have is that I wanted to gather the sparks. And
I love that.
Yes. Gather the sparks and really dogpile and have experiences. And we use nature, because when we talk about authenticity, you know, you did the incline. So as you're moving step by step by step, you're now thinking only about this moment and this next step, right? Yeah. And you're now feeling small compared to Mother Nature. And you're tuning in now to who you really are. And I feel nature is like the best way for people to connect to that authentic self, whether it's, you know, water, mountains, snow, sand, rocks, river, lake, whatever gets you going. But when it's you facing something bigger than you start to learn who you are.
That is so true.
And the physical, athletic, challenge of doing the hike you did.
Yeah.
And I saw your post because when you got through with it, you were so proud of yourself.
I was so proud because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't tickle.
I was so surprised. We were just elated that we made it, because it was just like, it felt insurmountable. Like, we didn't even plan to make it. Our goal was to like bow out halfway through. We made a plan. We're like, nah, if we make it halfway, we win. Like, whatever we did, we won. But halfway was kind of our loose goal. And we got halfway and we're like,
let's go.
Like, it doesn't matter how long it takes.
Right.
Because again, it's not about getting to the final destination.
Right. It was the process.
It was that journey, and we had such a beautiful journey.
So that's a tool I want to recommend. I want to recommend people this tool, because we've talked about so much, and we're going to have to wrap it up because it's time, and we could probably do 5 more episodes, maybe 10. But when we talk, I don't want it just to be a fluffy word, the authentic self. Mm-hmm. So one of the tools that I'd like to share, and I think Sonya would support this, is that grounding by getting yourself out in nature, barefoot in the earth, or maybe it's a waterfall you want to stand under, or maybe you want to jump in puddles in the rain. But spending time in the elements, spending time in nature, gardening, being in the moment. I raised 4 athletes. I think that the athleticism and the mind of the athlete, every second of that performance and the grind is getting to know themselves,
Yeah.
So I want to recommend that as a way to start to peel the onion.
Yeah.
And then if people want to work with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, I do have a website that is ongoingly being developed. Ongoingly is not quite a word, but that website is www.thezenvistas.com, and that's ZENVISTAS. Beautiful Zen Vistas, right? Thezenvistas.com, and my cell phone number, which I'm happy to give because it's also my business number, is 719-820-3220.
That's great. And then on your website, it probably talks about the different services you offer and what that session might look like.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
And if you have any questions, I'm very open. A lot of my work is very intuitive. It really is dependent upon what you need. And sometimes there's a journey, for you and I to see exactly, what do you need. And if it's not something I offer, I have a network of such amazing, holistic practitioners who are also like soul family. So, if I don't have what you need, then I may know a beautiful soul who could help you.
Yeah, that was the whole concept with the healing wheel for me.
Yeah.
The name of my company is that, just again, to have all these amazing people that can help in different ways. So today we're both here at the Center for Essential Wellness. Sonya actually has an office here, and that's in Colorado Springs, but she helps people not just in person, online as well.
Yes.
And today's episode is sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society, www.essentialwellnesssociety.com, and Healing Wheel Holistic Healing Wheel Retreats, www.healingwheelholistic.com. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sister.
And this was great. Have a great week.